Let's start up here. Actually, we're going to skip lane mapping for just a second and we'll go to lanes in pool. Let's say, for instance, we're going to set up an example here where we've actually got 10 lanes in the pool. So I'm going to hit the number 2 key on the 10 keypad down below. It's going to bring up a dialog box down here that asks me the number of lanes in pool. And I'm going to put in 10 and hit enter. Notice it changes to 10 up here. And then it's going to say down here on number 3 the lanes used. As commonly happens, we can drop lane 1 and lane 10, and we can use 2 through 9 basically as the lanes in the pool. Now you could set this to whatever you want. I can change it to, I can change this to actually 10, and so now I show 10 lanes down here in the display, if you notice. And go back up here and change it to 8 lanes. So for our example, we're going to set this up so that we're using just 8 lanes of the pool out of 10 possible. So now if I go up to lane mapping, what it is it shows the lanes are normal, number 1, if I want them that way. If I want to reverse the lanes, I hit on number 2, which then swaps it. So what is displayed on the screen down here as lane 1 is physically lane 10 in the pool. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this has to do with how you are running your pool, whether you're running it off a cable harness or whether it's with our index system. Our standard is for when we have an index system that the lane closest to the wall plate is physically wired up as lane 1. Now, that may not be the way you run it, but that is the way we wire it up, so that if we ever had to, in an emergency situation, say someone, total lack of maintenance or whatever, and we've got a deck plate that's not working, we could roll out a cable harness. On the cable harness, the lane pod that is closest to the timer is going to be lane 1. So that's why we wire up the wall plates the way we do. So when I reversed the lanes, notice that because I had 10 lanes in the pool, it reversed and put lane 10 as the physical lane 1 was displayed on the screen. I can go back and change it to normal this way. Now, if I'm on a kind of a typical situation where I've got 10 lanes in the pool, but I only want to run 8 out of those 10, what I do is I can come in here and I can shift the lanes up or down, and notice I'm going to go ahead and shift it up. And now what's displayed as physically lane 1 down here on the screen is literally lane 2 out in the pool. So now 2 through 9 are my 8 lanes that I've chosen out of the pool. And that's all there is to it. If it was some other oddball configuration, we can do that as well. Keep shifting it and notice it just keeps moving around. So this allows you the flexibility to tailor the timer to exactly what your pool is physically wired for. So I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to quit out of there, and I'm going to change this back to in lanes used in the pool. I'm going to change this to 10 lanes and then go back to lane mapping, and it'll show you it stayed shifted. So I'm going to run these lanes normal, and we've got lane 1. What's displayed here is lane 10 is lane 1 in the pool. Excuse me. I hit quit. Remember, anytime you make a change, you want to hit the Save Setups button. That way everything is saved and you don't have to worry if you were to shut your timer down. All of your data and all your setups are saved in that regard. So that's all there is to the lane setups for the pool. If we go down to scoreboard, there's a number of options here, 10 options here. The first one being a self-test, and what this will do is this will flash every other 8 on a numeric scoreboard in alternating sequence. So it'll take a group of digits and light them up with all 8s. After a half second, it'll switch over to the next set of 8s, so on and so forth. And it'll keep doing that until you tell it to stop. If I run the self-test, notice the menu changes to end self-test. When I want to end it, I hit the number 1 key again. Define modules and blank modules. If you have a scoreboard where you are wanting to change things around, you can actually go in here and change what is defined. When we set up a numeric scoreboard, we label them, we address them. Lane 1 would be module 01 through 0A, let's say, is lane 10. Now, this is a hexadecimal system, so it goes 01 through 09, and then lane 10 is actually 0A. If I want to define a module, I can literally scroll down to the one I want to define, and I hit the number 1 key on the keyboard, and then I define it as what I want. So in this case, I'm going to change this one to 01 just for an example purpose. Now notice what is physically 04, I'm now going to send it data for 01. If I want to get rid of that definition, I'll hit the number 1 key again, and I'll just redefine it back to its original, in this case 04. The number 2 option is really nice because I can show the definitions on the scoreboard. If someone has gotten in here and messed around and changed the scoreboard definitions, what we can do is we can click on this number 2 and actually have it show up on the numeric scoreboard. On the left hand side it will show the what's physically addressed in the module in that line of scoreboard, and then on the right hand side it'll show you what data is being sent to it. So for instance, when I had remapped this 04 to be 01, if you had a 04 module up on your scoreboard, you would then see 01 on the right hand side. I notice I've taken all the definitions out of there, so I'm back to normal. One thing you do want to do, make sure you turn this off before you get out of here. That way it doesn't hold your scoreboard. It will actually hold your scoreboard showing the definitions even if I quit out of here. In this case, we'll go down here. Blank modules is the same idea. I can go down and I can blank a series, one or a series of modules if I need to. For whatever reason I don't want to show scoreboard data on there, that's fine. Now keep in mind, if I've got 10 lines worth of data and I'm only running 8 lanes in the pool, don't worry about it. The timer will take care of turning off those 2 lanes that you're not using based on the layout, the pool layout that the lane mapping and pool layout that we set up in there. Number 4 is the number of lines in the scoreboard. As I click through, it will give me the options to be at a 2 line, a 3 line, 4 line, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And this is defined. The 6 has the ability to show multiple lanes worth of data on a single line, which is nice. It allows it to scroll through. So if I had only 5 lines worth of scoreboard, I could show 10 lanes worth of data, and it would just alternate back and forth between the 2 finish times from the timer. The number 5 and 6 as well as 7 pertain to a single line scoreboard. And a single line scoreboard is just one line of board, as it says, that displays all of the data from the timer. And it allows us to say we have a 6-lane pool, but we only have 1 line of scoreboard. Allows us to show all 6 lanes worth of data in kind of a scrolling fashion as that data comes in. So on a single line board, let's say in a 6-lane pool, first swimmer comes down, their time is going to get locked up on the board. As soon as the second place, third place, so on and so forth come in, their times will go up on the board. Once all swimmers are in, it will scroll through that data and then stop at however many times through you tell it. So this times to step 1 line scoreboard in this case was set to 1. If I wanted it to scroll through that data 5 times, I would change this to 5, and all I do is just click on it and input the number that I want. Number 6 is how many seconds I want that data, each individual bit of data, to be displayed. So if first place, I want them displayed for 5 seconds, so on and so forth. They're all going to be on the same time interval. And then finally, number 7 for the 1 line scoreboard is the list of what we're going to display. So if I click on that, it shows over here what we're actually doing. So in this case, the 0F module, which is our universal module, and it's set to show place order. If I also wanted it to scroll through and show heat, I would move this over into there by hitting the insert key. If I want to delete that, I just click on it, I highlight it, and I hit delete. So this gives you the options of the things I can do. I can place order, record, event, heat, team scores, so on and so forth. I can hit quit and I can get out of there. The number 8 is show results in lane order. The options here are lane order with separate running time. Just as a note, you will have literally like that. We will have a separate running time. So if you do not have a scoreboard that has a separate line dedicated to just running time, don't choose this option. because what will happen is you won't have any running time on the board. All you will have is splits and finishes in the various lanes. The other option is to run it in place order. Normally, for most people, it's to run it in lane order. Number 9 is whether or not the scoreboard splits are cumulative or subtractive. Very straightforward. Just clicking on the number 9 toggles between those. And finally, number 10 is to do not emulate a 10-lane scoreboard. The biggest thing on this is if you have a matrix display, it has the ability to show lane 10 as 1-0, and so you would change this to emulate a 10-lane scoreboard, and so your lane and your place will both show up as 1-0 instead of 0A. Finally, in this section, let's go through the printer. Now, keep in mind the printer is solely for the setups in here are solely for the older System 6s in which you're running a PCL6 compliant printer. I say solely for. The configuration of the printer was done through for newer timers is done through the Sport Loader program and done in the install menu. The older printers, or the older timers, excuse me, you needed to define what printer you were using that was PCL6 compliant. If you notice down here in number 7, I've got it defined as an HP PCL. If I have a newer timer that is USB compatible and I've already configured a printer for that, this no longer applies. I can change this to anything I want, but it'll still print out of that USB port. The things that are valid on both versions of the System 6 of the store print format tells me what things I'm going to put in the list. In this case, just a race summary, and then I force a form feed out of there. Like I said before, some of the newer printers queue up data if they don't have a full page worth of data. I can also put things like split summary, relay summary, and form feeds in there. And quit. I can actually put in a sponsors message if I would like. In this case, Colorado Time System 6. You can change it to whatever you want. Always print on the store print button. Do not always print on the store print button. Usually this is set by default to always print on this. So as soon as the race is finished, they hit the store print button and it will start kicking out the data for the race. Number 4 is user-defined printer control codes. For certain printers, we need to put in the printer control codes, and if you need those, it's probably best on our tips on our website in the newsletters. There's a tips and tricks section. If you scroll through there, and you'll find the actual one that shows what the most common printer control codes are, and this pertains only to older System 6s that use the LPT or the parallel port and are running a PCL6 compliant printer. This does not apply to a USB printer on a USB enabled System 6. Type size works for any of the System 6s. I can change it between Pica, Elite, Condensed, and Super Condensed, depending on how much data you want to get on the page. Just as a kind of general rule of thumb, Pica for 6 lane, Elite for 8, Condensed for 10, and Super Condensed for 12. Most places tend to run it at Elite, but that's totally up to you and totally up to your eyesight as to how small a print you can read. Lines per inch, 8 or 6 is the choice, and that's literally just play around with it and figure out what makes the most sense and what's formatted the best for you. For the older System 6s that use the PCL6 compliant printer, here are your choices. So we'll go through on number 7. We'll actually scroll through and start here. You have the choice of other and some generic printer that we don't have already predefined in here. This will also work for the Brother HL series like the 5340 or 5370 printers. No printer control codes needed for those particular printers. We can run it on other, or we can also run it on the HP PCL. We have support for the Citizens, the IBMs, Oki Data, HP PCL. Most people are going to probably end up with a Brother HL version of the printer. It's the most, probably one of the most reliable, most cost-effective printers, and it's also one that works right out of the box. If I have that printer, I can set up this printer choice as either HP PCL, like I said, or other. And then down here, I either have a space for minutes, an hour, or hours in the printouts. Usually, everybody leaves that as default for space for minutes. and then whether or not you want to show the event sequence title in the header of the printout.